And my friend Jeff Gunsel, known to some of you, said to me after he and Andre had tried to carry the woman, it was like carrying a sack of potatoes. It was so demeaning for her, and she was absolutely terrified of us. And it was hot, and they couldn't get their footing on the bombed-out road. And so Jeff said, Kathy, go get a stretcher. Where? And then they pointed me in a direction, and I remembered I'd seen a Red Crescent sign, so I peeled off running, and sometimes it's good to have been a high school study teacher. 3 Israeli Defense Force soldiers came running at me with their guns aimed, and I said, put those guns down right now. And they did. And tell me where the entrance to the hospital is. Which one do I use? And they said, well, not that one. Thank you. And off I went. Inside the hospital, the doctors were there in their green scrubs. The nurses, the people that could have helped the people in the Jenin camp, but they couldn't come out because the snipers wouldn't shoot over their heads. And so they gave me a stretcher, and I went running back, and there was Jeff Gunsel kneeling over the old woman, waving his blue passport, shouting, Americans, Americans! And the Israeli Defense Force soldiers up above were lining down cups and plates and glasses from the apartment they were ransacking, seeing if they could hit the grandmother. War causes such confusion. I'd like to take you with me into a jail I spent a little bit of time in this summer. Inside this jail, I met the most unlikely jailer I've ever experienced. Her name was Bessie. She had long gray hair in a braid, a jovial face. Even though she was wearing the tan shirt and the brown pants and the belt with the handcuffs and the gun, the work, she still didn't look like a jailer. She looked like she'd be very happy at a quilting bee. And all the other prisoners liked Bessie, and the co-workers liked her too. I was just there for 4 days, but you could pick things up pretty quickly. Bessie was assigned to look after the women. It got overcrowded. We were being moved from one jail cell to another. And so she started talking with us. She probably wasn't supposed to, really, but I think everybody made an exception for Bessie. And she said to us, I'm going to have me some real fun this weekend. And the girls in the prison, the women, said, oh yeah, Bessie, what are you going to do? She said, well, girls, I'm going to be paid $12 an hour to carry an AK-47 and run through the woods of Fort McCoy. I'm going to be an extra. I'm going to be a bad guy. And they're paying me for their exercises. And one of the other women prisoners said, oh, Bessie, my son works at Fort McCoy, and I was hoping he could get me a job to do that when I get out. And my heart sank. Because it just didn't seem like the time or the place to try to talk about what the exercises, the war games are really planning for. And I'd actually known some people in Iraq who had told me directly what it was like when soldiers came to their house and kicked in the doors and turned over their cabinets and ransacked everything, and then hogtied the men in the family and took them away for days, sometimes months, of interrogation. And for Bessie, it seemed so much to be like a game. And yet there's Bessie, one of the most compassionate and really kind of brave prison guards I'd ever seen. And I started to think, gosh, if Bessie was part of what Peter and I and maybe others of you were a part of in Washington, D.C., when you wear the orange jumpsuit and the black mask, and you can't always breathe properly, and it seems like the 2-hour vigil is lasting surely more than 2 hours, and you start to realize what it must be for these prisoners at Guantanamo, day after day. Bessie had that kind of empathy. I think if that had been the circle she'd moved in, or if she had ever donned the long black gown and the papier-mâché mask and held the gray cloth doll as one of the mourning mothers. I mean, maybe the peace movement wouldn't pay $12 an hour, but if we could bring Bessie into that circle, I feel so sure that her understanding would be radically, radically different. There's another story I want to share with you from that walk. It happened that I had to take a day off from the walk. It was a 450-mile walk, so I didn't mind taking a day off, actually, whether it was in prison or, but this was to go give a talk. And so I was home at our own place when the phone rang at 6:45 in the morning. And one of our co-workers and someone with whom we feel very close had been working with the Christian Peacemaker team in a place called Tuwani. And Tuwani is also in the West Bank, a place where Israeli Defense Force soldiers are present, but they do a very good thing there. The settlers nearby have attacked the children as they are on their way to school. And so the Israeli Knesset, the parliament, has mandated that Israeli Defense Force soldiers have to walk with these children to safeguard them. But it happened on this particular day that the children weren't going to school, they were going to summer camp. So technically, there didn't have to be the accompaniment. And so there was no jeep, there was no Israeli soldier in sight, and the settler put on a mask and he pulled out a slingshot, and from a perch up above, he started firing rocks through the slingshot at the children. And Joel, my housemate and co-worker, realized he'd better act fast, and so he told his co-worker to quick take the kids to safety around a bend. And then, because he's very dutiful, he pulled out his video camera, because the Christian Peacemaker team trains people to document human rights abuses, and he started to film the settler, the masked man, with the slingshot. And then he carefully put his video cam away and he started running. Well, what he maybe didn't count on was that he was running uphill, the settler ran downhill, overtook him, took out the video cam, smashed it over Joel's head, gashed his forehead, broke his glasses, hit him again and again. Joel's a big, big guy, but he stood his ground, and it was humiliating. All he could do was scream for help, and I don't know what caused this, but the settler then ran away. And Joel he was really okay, but he was very shaken, and he had his cell phone, and I think out of reflex, he called our number in Chicago. So I answered the phone, hello, Kathy, they did hurt me bad. I've been hurt real bad, Kathy. They really got me. And I said, try to get an ambulance, and as I say, he's okay. He just has the tiniest of scars. 2 days later, those children organized themselves into a little procession, and they had signs that said, we have a right to go to school. There was international coverage, and the children spoke about how much they admired Joel because he didn't fight back, but he didn't go down. And Joel, all his life, will be able to remember that story. Now, it happened when I caught up with the team members. We ourselves, as a community, we're wanting always to welcome the stories of Iraq vets against war. And I think many of you now know these stories and cherish these very brave individuals. But they have stories that it's very, very hard for them to remember throughout their lives. Certainly in both instances, people know at a deep and an integral way that war is not a game. But I think back to Bessie, who was certainly being encouraged to believe that war is a game. And I can't help but think of some conversation that was recorded in an article about the Balad Air Force Base in Iraq, where the Air Force Base people are thrilled, they're excited, because they now have the MQ-9 Reaper. The MQ-9 Reaper is one of these drone planes that actually has the weapons entrusted to the unmanned aerial vehicles so that it's a hunter-killer weapon. They call it a kinetic weapon. And you have the war packaged. You never have to send a soldier into the war zone. In fact, at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, inside of a trailer, the pilots don't go in a cockpit, they go inside of a trailer, and it's like being gamers. They manipulate these drone airplanes. Well, the British and the American pilots are so excited over in Iraq to be part of this, and the American pilots said, well, it's just great because we've got them watching our football games, and we watch their soccer games, and then the British pilot countered, yes, but we've got them drinking our tea. We go through 100 tea bags a day. It's just a wonderful cross-cultural experience. Maybe they'll sit down for tea with Afghans with Iraqis, with Palestinians. There's much more cross-cultural experience to be had.